you want me to tell them to?
I think we should, eh?
Yeah.
And then we can get started right away.
Okay.
I can just shut the door too.
It is. It is warm.
I'm always cold. It's warm.
You're not cold today.
Just take a seat in that chair right there. Your public hearing will be in first minute.
Okay. I'd like to call this meeting to order. Welcome, council and guests that have come. At this time, I'd like to give the opening over to my Deputy Mayor, Councillor Michael Swift.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Earlier this month, Manitoba became the first province to significantly loosen its COVID-19 restrictions. As of May 4th, non-essential retail stores could reopen, customers could sit on restaurant patios, and people could get haircuts. This was a significant and important step in restoring our freedoms. Interestingly, many critics expressed concern that Manitoba was reopening much too soon. Some businesses that could reopen chose to remain closed, while others implemented distancing requirements, such as not accepting cash from customers, that went far beyond anything recommended by the province. On April 30th, CBC asked Manitoba Nurses Union President Darlene Jackson for her reaction to the province's reopening strategy. Jackson suggested that lifting the restrictions risked, quote, undoing the progress we have made in containing the virus. She also made a rather bold prediction. Case numbers are likely to grow as a result of relaxed social distancing measures, and that is likely to result in more patients in our hospitals and ICUs, stated Jackson. So far, Jackson's doomsday prediction has been proven wrong, not by a little, but by a lot. On May 4th, Manitoba had 5 COVID-19 patients in the hospital. Today, we have 1. That's right, 1. In other words, Manitoba's COVID-19 curve is flatter than a pancake. Had the province listened to the naysayers and kept everything closed for another month, our COVID-19 numbers wouldn't be any lower than they are right now. And we should be thrilled with these low numbers. The whole point of these restrictions was to flatten the curve so that our hospitals don't become overwhelmed with critically ill patients. So far, that goal has been achieved. However, while physical distancing measures can slow the spread of the virus, they will not stop everyone from getting sick. And yet, some people seem to think that we should all just stay home until a vaccine is developed. That is ridiculous. Let's be clear. Most experts say it will be at least a year and probably much longer before a vaccine becomes available. In the meantime, we need to accept that this virus is going to be around for quite a while. This means we need to start resuming our normal lives. It is time for us to go back to our workplaces, to shop in stores, to take our kids to the playground, and to visit the library. While Prime Minister Justin Trudeau is still telling Canadians to stay home, the Manitoba government has wisely replaced its stay home message with a stay safe reminder. Stay safe is a much better message than stay home because it recognizes that there is no need for everyone to remain home right now. Manitobans can decide for themselves what is safe and what is not. Obviously, what staying safe looks like in practice will vary depending on everyone's personal health status and family situation. If you need to shelter at home for a longer period of time, that is fine. Just don't assume that everyone else needs to make the same choice as you. Life must resume, whether scientists discover a COVID-19 vaccine or not. It's important to recognize that staying safe does not mean zero risk. Everything we do in life involves at least some level of risk. Rather, staying safe means keeping risk at a manageable level. In the context of COVID-19, it means ensuring that our hospitals are not overrun with too many serious cases at the same time. Based on the evidence, it is reasonable to say that the risk from COVID-19 is manageable right now. That is why the province must continue to loosen restrictions. In the end, it is possible to be safe and to accept a reasonable level of risk at the same time. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Zwaagstra. That was a very good opening. Council, we have the agenda in front of us. Would like to have a motion to adopt. Councillor Penner, second by Councillor Hebert. Call for the question. All those in favor? That's carried. Okay, Council, we have the minutes of May 5th, 2020, the regular council meeting. Starts on page 1. We've all had a chance to review them. Looking for a motion to approve. Councillor Penner, second by Councillor Siemens. Any comments?
No comments?
Call for the question. All those in favor? Carried. Is there any business arising from the minutes? Okay, seeing none, we will go on to number 6, the public hearing. It is just a little past 7:35, so we'll go to 6A, Variance V-2020-09. This is Re 411 Rockwood Street. Council, it starts on page 4 of your package. At this time, we will close the council meeting and open the public hearing. Mr. Workington, could you please introduce this file?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, members of council, this is application for variance file V-2020-09, and it is with respect to 411 Rockwood Street. The owner of the property and the applicant of the variance are Johann and Katharina Giesbrecht. The purpose of the variance application is to vary the maximum size permitted for an accessory building to 1,200 square feet, whereas the RR Rural Residential Zone permits a maximum of 1,000 square feet. And the applicant is requesting to put up a 1,200 square foot storage building on the property. Notices, as are required under the Planning Act, have been issued. There are 2 pieces of written correspondence on file, and these documents were placed in council's mail bins after the preparation of the agenda package, so you should have received them. With respect to the application, there is precedent where in recent history where council has approved accessory buildings that were larger than the permitted size, as is noted in the report from the city planner. Recommendation is that council approve the variance application subject to the existing accessory building being removed prior to construction.
Thank you, Mr. Workington. Is the applicant here today? Do you wish to speak? Take the podium. State your name and address, please.
My name is John Giesbrecht, 411 Rockwood, Steinbach. We're fairly new in Steinbach. We came from northern Petersfield lately, but other than that, yeah, we're here. We're making ourselves at home. Our kids and grandkids are all here. I like to live here. I like to come and get some sausages and stuff.
Okay, and the nature of the building, what?
It's I bought a Quonset, those tarp one Quonset, and it's 30 by 40, and that's the size they do come in. So there is not suitable size for exactly 1,000 square feet. So this one brings it up a little bit above, which this space I happily use once it's under the roof.
Are there any questions for the applicant from council? Councillor Siemens, go ahead.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, Mr. Giesbrecht, are you running a business on that property?
No, not really. It might look sometimes like it, but it's we do a few campers a year. We import them from the U.S. and we fix them up and sell them. But I don't call it a business. It's just a little extra money on the side. But
Another question, sir. It does look like a full yard. We have a couple complaints who are objecting to this recommendation or this request to build the building.
okay.
And it is because the amount of RVs and trailers on the yard is, are they going to be staying there?
No, no. I'm not saying that I won't have any. I am planning on keeping one motorhome for myself. That's a big part where that building gets built, that I can park it for the winter inside. And other than that, no, these campers, by the end of the month, most of them should be out. On the other hand, I don't necessarily need to store them there. If I do, I didn't realize that the greenhouse here, they rent space for $25 a month, which is cheap. So I started to bring it there. And so anything that's it's starting to look a little ugly, I take it there, no problems.
Answered well. Any other questions from council? Okay. I'll have you sit down. You might have to come back after. Is there anyone here wishing to object to this file or have any questions? Is there anyone here wishing to have a question or objection to this file? I'll ask one more time. Is there anyone here that has an objection or has a question for this file? Okay, seeing none. We will close the public hearing, open the council meeting. Council, how would you like to proceed? Councillor Siemens?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Do we have a seconder? Councillor Penner? Go ahead, Councillor Siemens.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think he certainly answered the questions, that he's not running a business, that he does repair campers. On the drive-by, I did see everything that the people that were objecting saw as well. I think maybe that would clean up the yard. The building that he is requesting to build, it does fit into that area with all the businesses that are beside it. And and I think that will clean up that property. As he explains, that building does need to come down. So the recommendation from administration is to approve the variance on the condition that the existing shed be removed prior to construction of the new building, and I would like that in place as well.
Anything further, Councillor Penner?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I concur with Councillor Siemens. It is in an area, rural residential, with surrounding properties that the variance is actually quite minor in terms of a 200 square foot variance on a 1,000 square foot secondary unit. I would caution, though, to the applicant that we need to make sure that we are keeping our city sightly and that we are following bylaws in terms of what is all on the site at the time as well.
I didn't quite hear the last part.
I just want to make sure that you're aware. We do want to make sure that our city is continuing to be sightly. We put a lot of pride into our city. So
Once this old building is gone, then I can clean it much better up and put some nice gravel down. And it's going to be a very big, nice parking lot, very tempting though, but I'll try to manage.
thank you.
Anything further of council? Anything in closing?
No, sir.
Well, council, I too I will support this motion. Yes, there was some questions possibly brought up by people with concerns, but the applicant seemed to answer those questions very well. He proved there was no business there, business being run there, and that he has a place to store them off-site, so that he seemed to answer the questions we had. So for that reason, I will support this motion. We'll call for the question. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Thank you, council. Okay, we will move down to 6B. This is bylaw 2147. This is Maple Street. Starts on page 16 of your package, council. At this time, I will close the council meeting, open the public hearing. Mr. Workentine, I would like to ask you to introduce this file, please.
Yes, if I may just hold off until the applicant is in chambers. Mr. Mayor, members of council, this is proposed bylaw 2147, which is an application to rezone several properties with civic address of between 135 and 191 Maplewood Street in Steinbach. The owner of 135, 157, 165, 183, and 191 Maplewood Street is Elmer Taves. The owner of 149 and 169 Maplewood Street is TNT Ventures, Inc., and the applicant for the rezoning for all of the parcels is Mr. Jeremy Peters. Purpose of the bylaw is to rezone the properties from RLD, residential low density, to RMD, residential medium density. The applicant is proposing to rezone the properties to allow the development of multifamily buildings on the subject parcels. Notices, as are required under the Planning Act, have been issued. There are 3 pieces of correspondence that were received and are on file at the time of assembly of council's agenda package. Those are in your information package. With respect to the application, in addition, this particular application is and site is viewed as an infill site, and the development agreement and will require a development agreement, which includes, among other conditions, that it would be subject to an administrative site plan approval process. Several of these properties were subject to a previous rezoning application in 2018, which was denied by council. However, this new proposal is being submitted by a new applicant. Recommendation from administration is that bylaw 2147 be given a second reading, subject to a development agreement, and subject to any new information that may be provided at the public hearing.
Thank you, Mr. Morgentine. Is the applicant present today? Would you wish to speak? Yes. Okay, take the podium, state your name and your address, please.
Sure. Good evening. My name is Jeremy Peters. I live at 28 Walnut Avenue in Mitchell, but I grew up at the corner of Ash and Hickory, just a few blocks from the site of this proposed development. A lot has changed in this area since the early 80s. Back then, Lowen Boulevard was still called Town Line Road. Stonebridge Crossing was called First Avenue North, and I think it maybe was called First Avenue because there weren't any streets further north. It was just a big field. I remember when they dragged the Baptist church across that field to its new home on Town Line with 3 big tractors. I remember when Georgetown was developed beginning in the late 80s. Granite Park came later, and now of course Stonebridge has extended east and is the home of a number of medium-density developments and some healthcare facilities with more to come. So a lot has changed, and most of it for the better. The neighborhood has some terrific people living there, many of which of whom I've had the pleasure of meeting. There are some very attractive homes. I'm just going to change the slides here. From single family through to 3-story apartments that add value and attractive streetscape. There's a wonderful walking path from Lowen Boulevard to 80 Penner Park and direct access to the 4-mile path. There are several choices for a place of worship nearby. There's excellent health care both at the primary care center and the nearby Bethesda Hospital. The neighborhood has the good fortune of being near a highly developed commercial corridor with many amenities and with a great bike path leading to that. There we go. Oops. But for longtime residents, there have been some negative changes as well. Traffic through some of the streets has increased, and some of the older houses have become decrepit, particularly these 7 houses on Maplewood. Some before their time, others mainly due to reaching the end of their economic lives. Of course, there are also some heritage homes in the neighborhood that have been lovingly maintained as well. What I am proposing tonight is an infill project. Infill projects are difficult. They can be expensive for a variety of reasons, including accrued land value, demolition, and required utility upgrades. They can be politically challenging because change is hard and not everybody has the same vision for change. Because of these difficulties, infill projects aren't that common. As a city grows, developers look to the edges of town to establish new suburbs from farmland, and the core of the city gets forgotten. Some neighborhoods can maintain the status quo with respect to quality of housing stock, while other neighborhoods aren't as lucky due to circumstances that are beyond the control of the residents. Those circumstances can include the growth or establishment of surrounding neighborhoods, which is certainly one of the factors here. I could be one of those developers who works on the edge of town, but there's something about the possibility of being an agent of positive change that has drawn me into this idea of renewal. And I really believe that good development and city planning includes reusing existing infrastructure and revitalizing neighborhoods, not just growing on the edge while the center decays. That said, here is what I'm proposing. It will be a 72-unit garden-style apartment complex consisting of 3 phases of construction, with 2 12-plexes built at a time. The 12-plexes would have 3 floors. I would expect the project to take about 5 or 6 years, with each phase taking around 10 months to complete. I spent a lot of time engaging with the neighbors and other stakeholders to get a real sense of what concerns there are about development in this neighborhood. That engagement included 2 letters, a website for gathering feedback and discussion, a lot of phone calls and texts, coffee dates, backyard meetings, driveway meetings, social media chats, and more. I also studied the past proposal for this site along with the more recent proposal for the 9-plex, which is currently under construction across the street. I believe that I understand the issues and concerns of the neighbors really well. So I'd like to start with showing you the site plan. This site plan responds to several neighborhood concerns, including privacy, density, water drainage, and traffic. So on the privacy side, we looked at placing these buildings far enough away from the backyards on Albert Street. The closest building, as you can see, is 100 feet from the fence line of those backyards. This has also allowed us to almost eliminate any shadow on these yards, as illustrated by this shadow study that we did. The height of the buildings we are proposing also reduces shadow and at the same time deals with the concern about privacy. So the current zoning allows for 2-story houses that are up to 35 feet tall. That's the current zoning. The building that we would propose with the RMD zoning would be about 32 feet tall. We've also included privacy fencing along the east and south sides of the property. Density is another concern that we're responding to with this site plan. This land is approximately 2.4 acres and could accommodate more than 120 units under the zoning bylaw specifications for RMD. However, that would yield a large mass of a building with no green space and a big parking lot. It would be impossible to make that kind of building fit within the context of the existing streetscape. I also feel that a building like this would not be very livable. I want to offer 2-bedroom suites that have a lot of windows and not a lot of inside neighbors. So what we're doing is we're arranging a series of smaller, short buildings across a park-like green space with plenty of setback from the streets. In fact, up to 70 feet back for half of the buildings. Having them set back like that, both from Maplewood and Albert, will reduce the feeling that there is a lot of density there because the buildings will not feel imposing. And bringing the number of units down to 72 will mean that there just won't be as much density there. Lastly, staggering the buildings like this will allow for each unit to be a corner unit with lots of windows. So traffic is something that I've heard about from a number of neighbor residents. And I own 2 duplexes further north along Maplewood, so I know that there's a lot of traffic on this street, which has been deemed a collector street by the city. I have studied this traffic issue at great length and have discussed the matter with quite a few stakeholders. I have found that the local residents along Maplewood, Stonebridge, and Albert are not the source of the traffic concern, nor will the proposed 72 additional neighbors make a significant impact. In fact, I would argue that they will become concerned neighbors too as soon as they move in. The concern is due to the fact that Georgetown and Granite Park residents travel home down these streets, and that many residents from other neighborhoods to the south use these streets as a shortcut from Lowen to the Highway 12 commercial district. But what our site plan does to deal with internal traffic is to have one lane onto Stonebridge and the other onto Maplewood, dividing the traffic onto both streets. It also allows for all cars exiting the complex to do so traveling forward, which is safer than backing onto the street. We have also decided to change the orientation of the buildings after consultation with neighbors to allow for better sight lines at the stop sign on Maplewood northbound. And so as for the issue of people taking that shortcut, I would propose to spend up to $30,000 on traffic calming devices for Maplewood and Stonebridge, which could include speed bumps, radar signs, other signage, or any traffic calming device that the city administration would support. So some neighbors have expressed concern about water drainage, and I don't blame them. It has been a tremendous challenge for the city and developers to manage water in this rapidly growing community. But I would point out that we can't build this thing without getting an engineer to design a drainage plan that passes the stringent requirements set forth by the engineering department. And this site plan responds to that requirement, partly in the form of the tremendous amount of green space as shown here. Green space absorbs water and hard surfaces shed water. So that's the site plan. Next, I'd like to show you a shot of what the buildings would look like. As you can see, the arrangement of the buildings on the site allows for a lot of green space. There are practical reasons for this, but also the resulting aesthetic is designed to be respectful of the existing neighborhood, not overbearing with tall, towering buildings pressed close to the street, but with the name Maplewood Gardens brought to life with maples and gardens. I envision a green space where neighbors can become friends, and even those that are just walking by can enjoy. The buildings themselves have clean lines, good proportions, and pay homage to other apartment buildings in Steinbach, some of which were built in the 1970s. The balconies have frosted glass railings because one neighbor said she didn't want to see people's stuff on their balconies. The materials we'd use are reflective of traditional materials in the area, including hardy board siding, stone, and stucco. We would choose materials that will look just as good decades from now with minimal need for maintenance. Again, we're proposing a short building height of around 32 feet. So in closing, I want to stress again how intentional I've been with this design. It's not about picking blueprints from a book that will yield the cheapest construction cost we can get. It's about engaging with and respecting the neighborhood, thoroughly thinking about how to mitigate concerns, and to make a positive contribution to the community. It's about getting advice from professionals such as architects, engineers, urban planning consultants, local and trusted construction management companies, city administration, and more. It's about consciously thinking about how to do good business, which means making a solid investment in an ethical way. I think that's the way to do infill, and maybe not everyone will agree, but I think we found so much common ground with our neighbors that we've been able to propose something really special. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll just have you state. Are there any questions for the developer, the applicant? Councillor Siemens, go ahead.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Just if this was to be approved, where would be phase one?
Phase one would be at the corner of Stonebridge and Maplewood.
Thank you.
I'll ask again, is there, go ahead, Councillor Hebert.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Peters, you've obviously done homework and been pretty
Thank you.
in doing it. Obviously, a design like this would be 100% of the equipment or more. Very well thought out. The issue I have with that area is the traffic.
Mm-hmm.
Both Stonebridge and Maplewood are thoroughfares. As you mentioned, people coming in from Deerfield and Rokeby cut across along Boulevard, down Stonebridge, past the medical center, and that way Red River College, and Medical Center going down Stonebridge. And there's traffic going to and from Lone Boulevard on Maplewood.
Yep.
The other issues we have there is right at the back lane where you're proposing the entrance and exit onto Stonebridge. The bus stop is right there. And usually there's 7 or 8 cars parked there waiting to unload their children or picking up their children.
Yep.
The other issue is with that amount of traffic, if you have other traffic there, like the people that do the lawns, when they park a vehicle there, there's only one vehicle can get by, because that whole area is, it's a narrow street, and so if you see somebody coming and there's a truck or something parked there, you have to wait. And so I'm just wondering, my question
Okay, I was just wondering where your question was, yeah.
is there a way of making the traffic flow smoother through that area where they wouldn't come out onto Stonebridge, but maybe rather that the only entrance would be off of Stonebridge and your exit would be off of Maplewood, and then cars could go both north and south?
Okay. So I would just maybe start with the school bus question. You know, Steinbach has experienced tremendous growth over the last 20 years, and the school division has done a terrific job of responding to that growth. I feel that they'd be able to handle adjustments due to density changes for one, but also as far as the school bus route and that stop, you know, I drive in from Steinbach or from Mitchell to Steinbach every morning behind a school bus, and it stops on the 52 highway and picks up kids all the way along. And I feel that the school division is well equipped to pick up and drop off kids safely on all kinds of busy streets and highways, and I'm sure that it can be done on Maplewood and Stonebridge as well. On the question about the parking lot, yeah, I think we could look at having just one entrance. I think part of the reason why we did two is because you need to be able to have a fire truck drive right through or be able to do a U-turn in the parking lot. And this parking configuration doesn't allow for a U-turn per se. I think you could do maybe a 2-point turn, but I'm not sure that that's allowed as per building code.
Would that be feasible to have an entrance, only an entrance off of Stonebridge, then the exit onto Maplewood?
Like have it as a one-way?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's totally doable. Yeah.
Any other questions for the applicant? No? Is there anyone here with questions or wanting to object to the spot?
Excuse me. My name is Kurt Buchert. I live on 159 Home Street North in Steinbach. And thank you, Mr. Peters, and thank you, Mayor and Council, for a well-done presentation, and appreciate the due diligence that the Council is looking at this matter. One of the things about any growing city is dealing with drainage, and you started addressing it and stuff, which is really dear to my heart, living on Home Street and all the issues with drainage on Home Street. So any project that comes across these in front of council needs to consider how they can do to reduce runoff, how to reduce sediment and nutrients runoff, and how to improve the water quality from runoff from any development. And this includes reducing heavy metals, reducing oil and grease, and other bacteria and stuff which are not safe for people to walk in or anything like that, or kids to play in. And any goal should have, or any development should try to be as green as possible. And I can appreciate what you said today. Looking at the whole project, and I didn't have quite all the details. I quickly ran in here at City Council at lunchtime and tried to get as much information as I could from City Hall. And I misstepped. I thought there was 5 buildings, but there's actually 6 buildings. And they're approximately 4,690 square feet of area, each one of them. And then I'm not sure exactly how much parking lot space you have there, but I was estimating at least 24,000 square feet, which gave at least a total hard surface area of over 47,000 square feet. And when you do the calculation of a 1-inch rainfall on a 1,000 square foot roof or hard surface area, you end up with 623 gallons of water coming off of 1,000 square feet. So when you start considering what a 1-inch rainfall, 2-inch rainfall, 3-inch rainfall, 3.5, which is kind of considered 1 in 25 year or in a 6-hour period, it would produce 103,075 gallons of water. So that's a significant amount of water, or 385 cubic meters. I like to describe a cubic meter as the size of your washing machine. So there could be a significant amount of water developed from development such as this. But let's look at the current situation, what there is now, because we have to be fair, because the square feet of the roofs and also the driveways and stuff now would produce probably in the 20 to 25,000 gallons, so approximately 75,000 gallons less water than the proposed site. So my questions are, first of all, for the developer, what engineering devices are you going to be developing or instituting to prevent runoff from affecting other areas in the city? And where is the drainage going to be going? Is it going to the Home Street swale? Is it going to Stonebridge Crossing? Where is the water going to be going? That's my first question. And the second question is more for City Council. What will the City of Steinbach do to ensure that runoff from this development does not affect other downstream residents? The City of Steinbach was concerned that any changes to the Home Street swale could flood out residents in a report to Council in 2017. And that's one of the reasons why they didn't want to make any changes to the Home Street swale, including putting a culvert in or anything. And so those are my concerns. I am in support. I think it's going to be a good project. I think that it's something that will improve the area, but I do think that drainage needs to be addressed and make sure that it isn't affecting those downstream. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Peters, would you like to answer the question?
Yeah, I think the biggest tool that we'll have at our disposal as far as water drainage engineering will be is actually an engineer to design this for us, and also I think secondly the engineering department of the City of Steinbach will be a second tool that we'll use. As far as actual retaining devices, I actually don't have an answer for that, because we haven't gone so far as to design a drainage plan yet. But I know that we have to design it according to city specifications. I've been told by the engineering department that we'll have to hold all the water on our site. I guess the other thing that we have as a tool is all that green space. A lot of the water is just going to get absorbed into the lawn, but the rest of it has to be managed through an approved engineering plan.
Thank you.
Yep.
Mr. Workentine, do you have anything to add on the second question as far as what the city will do? I imagine it's much the same. We're going to be entering this development agreement, but is there anything you'd want to add to that?
I can mirror or echo what Mr. Peters referred to is part of every development application requires that the developer manages their on-site water that's generated from any storm events. Water that is generated on-site, whether it's through hard surfaces or otherwise, needs to be held on-site and the outflow managed. In simple terms, both the province and the city have requirements that stormwater that is allowed to leave a particular site. When there is a redevelopment, that rate of outflow needs to be maintained at the level as to what it was prior to development. And those standards have been applied by the city for several decades in the province as well. So those would be followed again in this case.
Thank you. Is there anyone else wanting to object or have questions to this file? Yeah, okay, return.
Mr. Warkentine, just wanted to clarify the amount of land that is currently into green space is going to be reduced by a substantial amount, around 60%. And so my concern is that the amount of water produced from a hard surface is going to be substantially more. And so, yeah, so that's just where I'm coming from, is just that when you go from a large, pretty much everybody's backyards there goes right, just a tiny little yard. And so we're talking probably 60 to 70% reduction of green space on this site. I mean, it's still a nice amount of green space for living, but as far as water retention and stuff like that, it is minimal. So just wanted to bring that up as a concern.
Thank you. Is there anyone else wanting to object or have questions to this file? Okay. I'll ask one more time. Is there anyone else wanting to object or have questions to this file? Okay. Seeing none, we will close the public hearing, open the council meeting. Council, how would you like to proceed? Councillor Stevens.
Motion to approve
That's for second reading.
for second reading.
And Councillor Zwaagstra was second. Go ahead, Councillor Stevens.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I first off want to commend the developer who has put a lot of effort through the neighborhood and to City Council and working with the various entities to make this work. Especially appreciate the amount of effort that went into speaking to city administration staff and getting all the details. The issue here, though, for me is a little bit different, perhaps. I live in that area, so I drive those streets constantly, whether on my bike or by car on my way to work. And part of the issues we have in downtown Steinbach is the large lots in a lot of our different neighborhoods. Few people want to rebuild on older lots that are long and narrow, as they are here. When these homes were first built in the 30s, 40s, 50s, families built them and wanted large lots so they could have large gardens that were so very common in Steinbach. But that's no longer the case. It is cost prohibitive currently for somebody to buy one of these older homes, tear the home down, and rebuild with a new home. And you would still have homes that are old neighbors. So that means that there has to be a conscientious effort by a variety of people with single homes. The properties on Maplewood need to be repurposed due to the condition of the homes. We've dealt with this a number of different times with developers. And I think this is the presentation here and the effort that's gone in speaks very positively. Like others have expressed, I too have concerns over the traffic flows on Maplewood and Stonebridge Crossing, as both are collector streets. This is a concern we hear in all different areas of Steinbach, not just in this area. But this is, there is a concern here. This is used as a bit of a shortcut for different areas of Steinbach. As I live close to and drive through these different areas a couple times a day, I do think that council at some time will need to review the traffic patterns through this area. One positive that I really appreciate is the current driveways that are being proposed, one on Stonebridge Crossing and one on Maplewood. That will remove all the driveways that are currently on Maplewood and stop people from backing out onto the street because it is a busy street. I also agree with the developer when he speaks to the issue of school buses. The Hanover School Division has shown that they are very open to suggestions on where to move bus stops and how to do that, and that would happen in this case again, I'm sure. What is positive is that the properties are on a current bus route, and more positive that we don't have to add sidewalks after the fact. They are currently in place. The developers work closely with the neighborhood and with the city of Steinbach, trying to make sure that all concerns are addressed. Because he has worked with the city planning department, no variances are being requested to make this happen. And due to feedback received, they've changed the building orientation to allow the corner lot to have more green space, meaning more visibility for vehicles that are at stop sign. I think this is a good step for this area, as this area does need change. And if you would like somebody who's more vocal than I am on it, you can ask my wife, Audrey. Our multifamily housing continues to have very low vacancy rates in Steinbach. It does amaze me that each time that we approve multifamily housing development, our vacancy rates don't go up. They continue to stay very low. I don't know where all these people are coming from, but I certainly welcome them to Steinbach. I like the plan that we have. I also appreciate the comments from Mr. Beckert on Home Street North regarding the storm sewer or regarding where the water flows. That is an issue on Home Street. Hopefully this doesn't add to that problem and we can mitigate any issues that do arise from that. But that is a concern. I've also spoken to that concern in the past, because one of the biggest problems we have in Steinbach is that we're very flat, and moving water, especially over land, has been troublesome. I like the plan, therefore I think we should approve this rezoning of these properties from residential low density to residential medium density.
Thank you. Councillor Zwaagstra?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm certainly happy to second the motion. I think this is a plan that's been presented well and makes sense for the neighborhood. It's impressive that the applicant has made the effort that he's done in terms of meeting with members of the community and reaching out and addressing concerns and to an impressive level of detail. The plan has been proposed, obviously results in an increase in density, but of course that's what happens when you rezone from low density to medium density, and I think that this has been designed in the best possible way to accommodate concerns, and it's a testament that there are almost no objections, and that certainly shows that there's significant buy-in, considering that in the past there have been many objections to previous plans that have gone here. Just to be clear, what we're approving is second reading, and in terms of this moving forward to the next step as far as working on a development plan, and this is not, we're not getting into the details of saying which direction it's going to go on the street. We're not giving any kind of that direction. That's for our administration to work out together with the applicant. All we're simply doing right now is we're approving second reading.
Anything further of council? Go ahead, Councillor Ebert.
As I stated a little earlier, when I saw the application, I did have several concerns. One was the height of the building, and 32 feet obviously is less than what is required, for a two-story. The number of residents in the area, of course, is going to be 72 suites. It's going to probably be 100 residents or 100 cars. So there is an impact on traffic in the area. And as I stated earlier, with the school buses and traffic in the area. The other one was the objections from the citizens. I did speak to some people on the street. And again, I'm impressed with the homework that Mr. Peters did and in addressing these issues.
Thank you. One more time, anything further of council? Anything in closing?
Just, Mr. Mayor, I think one more time to speak to the issue that it's a change for the neighborhood. I think it's a positive change. The addition of green space, the removal of the driveways, I think it's very positive. It's a bit of a transitional area I've seen, is the way I see it, to more single-family homes in the other areas. But Maplewood is a congested area right now. This will, with the driveways coming off of Stonebridge and just the one on Maplewood, I think this will make a difference, but I think it is a positive improvement.
Thank you. Well, Council, I just want to start by thanking Jeremy Peters for coming to us and having such a thoughtful and such a complete presentation. And it looks like you've done a lot of work. You have done more work than any other developer that has ever wanted to develop this area before. This has come before us before, Council. And we know what that's done, and we know how the neighborhood has rised up and objected. And we have no real objections here. But we have some concerns, and I'm concerned about drainage too. We're flat. We need to know, we need to be careful where our water flows. That's one thing. But Council, we have, there's engineers on Mr. Peters' side. We have engineers on staff. I think we need to trust them to do a good job at this, and that will happen. I think with Mr. Peters' heart in wanting to build something of quality, something good for the neighborhood, something that will stand the test of time, I think we'll see that he will be pleasant to work with and listen to our staff's recommendations as far as drainage goes. So, but Council, I think it's a great plan. It's a way to start to transition this area, because this area definitely will be transitioned into higher density as we go most likely towards the highway. And this is a great start. And I want to commend Mr. Peters. Also, thank you, Mr. Buchert, for coming out. And your concerns have been heard and they'll be worked on. Thank you very much. And Council, at this time, I'd like to call for the question. All those in favor of second reading? And opposed? That is carried. Thank you. No, just a second. Okay, Council, we will be taking third, it says in your package we'll do third reading. We'll be doing third reading after administration's worked with Mr. Peters a little bit. There were a couple things that came up, and we'll do third reading a different time. There are no delegations. Council number 8, we've got reports and recommendations of city manager. This is the RCMP Acknowledgement of Consultation. Starts on page 36. Mr. Workney, would you like to introduce this file?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. This Acknowledgement of Consultation is an annual review process that the RCMP proposes to Steinbach Council just to identify and have an opportunity to review its policing priorities. This is normally done via a delegation by the staff sergeant of the Steinbach detachment. However, under current circumstances and challenges of appearing in two meetings in person, he rather preferred to submit this to council on its own. The priorities that are listed on this document on page 36 with the 4 priorities listed are the priorities that City Council adopted last year. The request from Staff Sergeant Lanninga is to present the information to City Council and to, if Council agrees with the policing priorities, to adopt them as the priorities for the coming year, and if there are changes to do that, and at any rate, whatever decision Council is prepared to make, that would then be communicated back to the local Steinbach detachment office.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Workney. You're wanting us to adopt that by a resolution?
Yes.
Okay. Council, if you're okay, Councillor Zwaagstra?
I'll make the motion that we adopt this.
Do it. And second by Councillor Penner. Go ahead, Councillor Zwaagstra.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is a reflection of our ongoing priorities in regards to policing, and the 4 are visibility of police, organized crime, property crimes such as break and enter, vandalism, and traffic. I think we can all agree that these are areas that we consider to be important. Obviously, we want police to be visible. That's an important deterrence to crime. Organized crime, that's what our general investigative section works on, the JAS unit, in terms of some of the organized drug trafficking and the deeper investigations. It's important to deal with that. Obviously, we know that property crimes are an issue in any community, and they are here as well. Traffic is always a challenge in Steinbach, and it's important that that the RCMP continue to work on that. And I will say that as the chair of the RCMP Advisory Board, with yourself, Mr. Mayor, we meet regularly with Staff Sergeant and with other members of that board, and we're very pleased with the work done by Staff Sergeant Laniga. He provides outstanding leadership, and the RCMP are very receptive to any time that we have questions or concerns. And so I would encourage us to go ahead with continuing with our existing priorities.
Anything further?
I would just comment, in general, we look to the RCMP committee for guidance and advice on this, and if this is your recommendation and suggestion, as Councillor Zwaagstra is saying, I'm very comfortable supporting that.
Anything further of council? Anything close?
Nope.
Yes, council, as a part of the advisory, the RCMP Advisory Board, I would actually like to echo Councillor Zwaagstra's comments and just say, yes, we have a great membership there. They're easy to work with, hardworking. They're involved in our community. I don't know, I can't say enough nice things about them, and we have a great relationship as far as the city, as far as towards the RCMP. They work well with us, and they've accepted our priorities, and they're working towards completing these priorities. So I'll just ask for the question right now. All those in favor? That is carried. Number 9, administration. We have the accounts payable at the back of the book. Council, we've all had a chance to look at them. Do we have a motion to approve? Councillor Penner, second by Councillor Hebert. Any comments?
No comments?
Call for the question. All those in favor? That's carried. We got 9B, the financial statements ending April 30th, 2020. It's also in the back of the book. We've had a chance to review. Looking for a motion to approve. Councillor Hebert, second by Councillor Siemens. Any comments?
No comments.
Okay, call for the question. All those in favor? That is carried. 9C, we've got the bylaw 2150, the realty levy tax. We got the second and third reading on page, it starts on page 37. Mr. Workington, would you like to introduce this file?
Yes, Mr. Mayor and members of council, this is bylaw 2150, the 2020 Realty and Education Tax Levy bylaw. Was given first reading at the last meeting. This will set the city's property tax mill rate for the coming year at 13.7 mills. And recommendation is for City Council to give this bylaw second and third reading.
Okay, motion to approve second reading. Councillor Zwaagstra, seconder. Councillor Hebert, any comments?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is obviously continuing our budget process.
Anything further?
I will agree with that. Thank you.
Okay. Call for the question. All those in favor? We've got, we'll go directly into third reading. Do we have Councillor Penner, second by Councillor Hebert?
Nothing further.
No comment.
Okay, we'll go right into the question. All those in favor? That is carried. We've got number 9D, we got the business tax levy. That is bylaw 2151. We'll do second and third reading of that today too. That starts on page 41. Mr. Workington, could you please introduce this file?
Similar to the Realty and Education Tax Levy bylaw, this particular bylaw 2151 sets the annual business tax rate at 0.5% for all business property in Steinbach. Recommendation is to give this second and third reading.
Looking for a motion to approve second reading. Councillor Zwaagstra, second by Councillor Penner. Any comments? We'll call for the question. All those in favor? That's carried. And we'll go directly into third reading. Looking for most, Councillor Hebert, second by Councillor Hebert.
No comment.
Call for the question. All those in favor? That is carried. Okay, question for Mr. Workington. 9E, the bylaw 2020, 69, not to proceed. Are we doing a motion on that today to not proceed?
Yes, this particular bylaw does have some history. It was given first reading by council in October of 2016, and it related to a rezoning application for a parcel of land that council recently approved a different bylaw or set of bylaws that included a secondary plan and also a rezoning. Unfortunately, it was an oversight that as this bylaw was not proceeded with, it will now require a resolution of council specifically to not proceed, and recommendation is that council pass a resolution accordingly.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Warney. That'll just take one motion then.
It's just a simple resolution, that's correct.
Okay, we're looking for a motion. Councillor Siemens.
Motion to approve what our administration said.
Okay. Do we have seconder? Councillor Penner? Any comments?
I believe the explanation was made.
Okay. So we'll go right into the question. All those in favor? That is carried. Okay, council, we've got 9F. We've got the building permits for ending April 2020. Do we have a motion to approve? Councillor Zwaagstra, second by Councillor Hebert. Any comments?
I guess we're going to not proceed, which means we're going to proceed. So let's approve the permits.
I second that.
Okay. Anything further of council? Okay, anything in closing?
No.
Well, council, we've definitely have some growth here. We've got quite a few housing starts, and yeah, we're moving along. We're expecting much more for the year, but we're definitely moving along, and it's great to see that we still have development during this time of COVID. So we'll call for the question. All those in favor? That is carried. Okay, 9G, we've got the Reid and Miller Chartered Professional Accountants, the audited financial report for 2019, starts on page 47. Mr. Warding, could you please introduce this file?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, this document represents the city's annual audited financial statements for the year ended December 31st, 2019. City Council did receive a fairly detailed report from the city auditor several weeks ago, and with particular questions and answers discussed. I can highlight a few things if you wish. If there are particular questions, I can try and answer them for members of council. But suffice it to say that the audit report did not note any exceptions. It is recommended for approval, and I would also forward that recommendation to City Council to formally adopt this financial statement for 2019.
Okay. Council, how would you like to proceed? Councillor Penner, do we have a seconder? Councillor, any comment?
Mayor. Yes, it was last week, or recently at least, we had the opportunity to meet with the auditor, and we went through these statements, and it was clarified with us, and I'm comfortable approving them based on that discussion.
Anything further?
Nope.
Anything further of council? Anything in closing?
Nothing further.
Okay. And nor do I. I'll call for the question. All those in favor? That is carried. Council question period. Are there any questions of council? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to correspondence and petitions. We've got the JCAP Library minutes for March 16th, April 18th, or April 8th, and May 1st. We've all got the minutes in front of us, but I've asked during this difficult time of that we've had COVID, that we're operating under this, I've asked Councillor Penner to just extrapolate on some of these minutes. So go ahead, Councillor Penner.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. It was quite a shock and quite a quick series of events that occurred with regards to COVID, the information that was coming in, much like in the private industry, we've had to adapt on the fly. So did public areas such as the library. So we did have a few extra, I would say, emergency meetings that were called to give guidance to administration in terms of how to react with regards to information that was coming at the beginning of March already. So there was a quick decision that was made, followed up by the recommendation of the province to close off public areas, which was done on March 17th. Earlier, we convened and discussed at a later date in terms of what we were going to be doing with the staff, how we were wanting to proceed, and how an open-up would look in mid-April. And then with the phase 1 of the reopening presented at the beginning of May with regards to the province's announcement, which did catch a few people off guard with regards to libraries being included in that. We had a quick meeting to start putting together the recommendations from the board in terms of phases on how we would like to see the library open up to the public to eventually be at its full function in the future.
Will, according to the frequency you're having your emergency meetings, will you be having one soon?
Yes, we actually are planning a meeting tomorrow. That was would actually be a normal scheduled board meeting, but it coincided well with phase 1 of the reopening, which began last week, Thursday, with regards to phase 1 looking that citizens as well as members of the JCAP library could pre-order books, then at a designated time come to the library, get buzzed in, go to the circulation desk, collect their books, and then leave.
Just one thing I would like to pass on that you could pass to the board, that I've had a few requests by phone for the library to reopen. There are families in our community that are, well, I guess they don't necessarily, they don't play soccer, they're not into sports, and they like to read as a family. And so if you can use that for encouragement, that's what's coming my way. So, Councillor Sway.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just sort of a comment/question, and this is in no way a criticism of Councillor Penner, because I know he represents the city well on the library board. I'm not really hearing anything in. So my first question, in terms of the phase 1 of the reopening, other than getting buzzed in to quickly pick up a book and leave, is there anything else in phase 1 that the library couldn't have already been doing ever since mid-March?
Thank you, Councillor Zwaagstra. As far as I understand, the restrictions that the province did put in place that could still have been done as a zero contact pickup at that time, not necessarily with people coming into the doors, but that books could have been given from the exact same procedures that they have now, but just to the individuals' vehicles.
Just to follow up, so given that the province had announced and had given several days' notice that May 4th was the date that libraries could reopen, is there any date that the library has in mind for when it will actually reopen? And actually reopen means people can go in and get a book. That's what we usually think of with the library reopening. As I know McNally Robinson in Winnipeg, they opened up on May 4th, and there's a lot of books in there, and they made it work. So I'm just wondering, is there any kind of date any specific date in mind for when people can actually go in and pick out their own book?
At this point in time, with the information that we were given from administration, the next phase is on a to-be-determined timeline.
Okay. Any other comments or questions? Thank you. Well, I think you probably have a feel for how council does feel, so you can represent that when you go there. Okay.
Absolutely, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much. We have no other business, so I'll be motion to adjourn. Councillor Penner, second by Councillor Penner. Call for the question. All those in favor? That's carried. Next regular council meeting will be Tuesday, June 2nd, 2020 at 7:30.